In a restaurant where each glass of wine costs more than a poor man's monthly wage, a blind boy, only 9 years old, sat quietly in the corner of a table. No adult beside him, no one cared to ask. He waved his hands urgently, whispering for his mom. No one answered. Not a single staff member stopped. Only the clinking of silverware and eyes turning away, as if his very existence didn't belong here. Until a young black waitress, thin and worn in an old apron, walked over. She knelt down, gently wiped the soup off his shirt, and whispered, "You can't see, but I see you." No one was moved. No one said thank you. Just a cold voice from behind the bar. "You're fired. No one gave you permission to do that." In a room full of luxury and indifference, a small act of compassion was labeled a mistake. A child ignored, a kind soul punished. But this was only the beginning. Because what that girl just did would change a destiny and bring down a system built on privilege and control. Now tell me, who do you think was truly blind in this story? The lavish room fell dead silent. Not out of emotion, but discomfort. Because of an image that didn't belong here. A black girl on her knees wiping the face of a blind child in the middle of a dining room made for the elite. No one moved. The man with the Paytech watch looked up, frowned, then sliced into his steak. The woman in a couture dress sipped her wine, whispered something about service protocols, a child abandoned. A gesture of kindness, and an entire room chose silence, as if morality needed permission here. From the bar, Grant, the restaurant manager, stormed over, his shrill voice slicing through the air like a command from God. "Amara Johnson, you're terminated effective immediately." No one gave you permission to touch a guest. No one objected. No one asked why. Grant's eyes came down like a blade, and the gaze of the whole room cut sharper. Contempt, as if kindness were an insult in this place. Far in the back, standing under the glittering chandelier, a woman in a white suit watched it all unfold. She said nothing, just quietly, took in every detail. Who was she? And why did she stay silent? You'll understand soon enough. Amid hundreds of eyes turning away, amid whispers laced with judgment, a small voice rose, piercing through the cold glass shell of the room. She was the first one who ever saw me. The sound wasn't loud, but it brought everything to a halt. Elliot, the blind boy, sat up straight, his trembling hand reaching into the air, as if still trying to find the warmth of the hand that had just touched him. She knew what I needed before I could even say it. Grant turned. The guests stopped eating. Something had cracked in the perfect facade of this space. But Amara had already turned away. Head down, quiet. No protest, no pleading. Not a single explanation. Just walking away like so many times before in her life, forced to disappear so no one else would feel uncomfortable. No one stopped her. No one asked her name. Only Elliot, still blind. But for the first time in his life, he felt truly seen. And behind him, the woman in the white suit remained still. Her eyes never left that black girl. That silence wasn't indifference. It was the calm before a storm. From the luxury restaurant, where each chair costs a year's rent, Amara returned to the Bronx, where every step echoed between cracked walls and the scurry of rats in dark hallways. The room barely held a bed, a broken-backed chair, and an old radio whispering Bible verses. Her mother, bedridden, skin grayish, eyes clouded, lay turned toward a slice of sky blocked by iron bars. Her little brother Emmanuel, 12 years old, blind since birth, sat by the window's edge, armband, fingers tracing the scratches on his white cane. Amara quietly changed out of her restaurant uniform. Said nothing about being fired. She cooked porridge with donated rice, fed her mother spoon by spoon, then combed her brother's hair. Few people knew. Amara had once been a top student at the New York State School of Child Psychology. Graduated with honors, led an outstanding senior project. But during a field placement, she had cradled an autistic child shunned by classmates and was dismissed for touching a student without permission. She submitted over 40 job applications. No one hired her. Every answer was the same. You're too emotional. You don't follow the system. What they didn't know was that the same heart they rejected would one day rewrite the entire system. The knock came at 7 a.m. No appointment, no warning. Amara had just finished changing her mother's bandages when she heard the car pull up outside the alley. A sleek black Bentley completely out of place in the mold-stained slums. A woman stepped out, white blazer, high heels, gliding over puddles without catching a drop. Celeste Marlowe. That face, Amara remembered it well. The restaurant owner. The one who watched everything happen and said nothing. I'm Elliot's mother, she said, her voice as precise as a signed contract. I saw how you handled the situation yesterday. I want you to come to the estate, work with my son. Amara stood in the doorway, hands still smelling of herbal ointment. Before she could answer, a small voice called from behind the woman, I need you. Elliot, in a pale gray sweater, stepped out of the car slowly, hands reaching into the air. No one guided him. He walked toward the voice he trusted. You're the only one who's not afraid to touch me. Amara looked at her mother, then at Elliot. She didn't know what was beginning, only that, from that moment on, she could no longer turn away. Celeste's mansion was a silent castle. Everything gleamed, but it was cold. Priceless paintings no one looked at. Heavy doors no one opened. And Elliot, the blind boy, lived in that world like a small ghost, moving only when he heard someone's footsteps. Amara brought no curriculum, no notebooks, no braille charts. What she brought was soul. She didn't teach him to read. Instead, she placed Elliot's hand on the wooden wall and whispered, listen to the wind brushing against the wood. That's light. She took him to the garden, taught him to draw with sticks in the damp soil. Red is the sound of fire. Green is the smell of grass when rain is near. She turned on the radio, let Elliot feel the drum beats pound into his chest. When you can't see, dance. Because your body still remembers the way. And for the first time in 2 years of being locked in darkness, Elliot laughed. A laugh that needed no permission. A joy no doctor's prescription could ever write. She didn't heal with theory. She did something no one in that mansion had ever done. She treated Elliot like a soul, not a case file. After her first dinner at the estate, Amara was led into the document room, a place where every medical record, prescription, diagnosis, and treatment plan for Elliot was stored, all bound in leather, filed like classified intel inside a cold memory bank. She read every page, thoroughly, carefully. And then she stopped. Her heart clenched. A red line repeated across reports from 3 top specialists. High potential for vision recovery if treated early. Amara froze. She flipped the pages. Every treatment option had been left untouched. No surgeries. No light therapy. No optic nerve rehabilitation. Elliot had never been given a chance. He wasn't fully blind. He had been left blind. Amara sat frozen in the quiet room, hands trembling. A boy who might have seen the sky, his mother's face, the green of the grass, was kept in darkness. Deliberately. Why? Why would a wealthy, powerful mother not save her child when there was still time? Amara said nothing. But from that moment, her eyes were no longer the same. Because she knew she had just stepped into a battle not only against prejudice, but against a fear disguised as love. Celeste sat in the living room drenched in white, as if she were living inside a glacier. The Earl Grey tea still steamed, but her hands were cold as stone. Amara placed the file on the table, her voice low and steady. You knew Elliot could recover. And you did nothing. Celeste didn't deny it. She looked straight at her, didn't flinch. I lost my husband in that crash. Elliot is all I have left. If he can see, he'll go to school, make friends, grow up and leave me. But if he stays blind, he'll always need me. Stay with me. Stay safe. Amara went still. Part of her wanted to scream. Part of her understood. She'd once kept her little brother inside for a whole year, afraid the world would bully him. But the difference was, she knew when to let go. Celeste didn't. You're not keeping your son close, Amara whispered. You're keeping him in a cage. And calling it love. Celeste turned her face away. But her shoulders gave her away. For the first time, the powerful woman cracked, revealing the fear of being left alone. But the cost of that fear was a childhood, a future, a boy's chance at light. And Amara could no longer stay silent. Just as trust began to take root inside the white mansion, a shadow from the past quietly returned. Grant, the restaurant manager who had once fired Amara in public, walked in through the security gate, shaking hands with a few old staff members, armed with a well-crafted lie. I heard she's working here now. I just wanted to warn Mrs. Marlowe. Grant pulled out a blurry video clip, edited from restaurant security footage, showing Amara holding a guest's antique watch in the chaos of that day. A few vague accounts from a waiter close to him sealed the doubt. Celeste, torn between trust and her need for control, nodded. And the police were called. There was no time for Amara to explain. No one asked what she had actually taken because they wanted to believe the worst. Midnight. The bedroom door burst open. 2 officers stood there. Elliot jolted awake. Mom, what's happening? Amara was handcuffed, right in front of the boy, who had only just relearned how to smile. She didn't do anything, Elliot screamed. Mom, you're wrong. You're doing the same thing they used to do to me. But Celeste turned away. Not because she was certain, but because she feared losing control. Again. And so, in the darkness of deceit, the woman who had brought light to a child was cast back into shadow by the very hands of the mother he loved. The next morning, news of Amara's arrest had spread through the old service crew. Someone who seemed the smallest in the system, Miguel, the dishwasher, quietly unclipped a Bluetooth earpiece from his collar. No one had noticed that, just days earlier, he'd overheard a conversation between Grant and sous chef Carlo in the storage room. I don't need her in prison, Grant had sneered. I just need Mrs. Marlowe to never look at her with trust again. A little elegant fabrication. That's all it takes. Miguel said nothing then. But when he saw the image of Amara being escorted away, in her wrinkled uniform, head down, hands cuffed, he knew silence was complicity. He printed the audio recording and handed it to the Marlowe family's attorney. That afternoon, in the frozen stillness of the mansion, Celeste listened to the recording. Speechless. In the reflection of the glass, she saw herself, cold, calculating, and wrong. The police returned. But this time, not to take someone away, but to cuff Grant. He thrashed, denied, but the evidence could not be erased. Celeste collapsed into the white armchair, her face bare, stripped of makeup and masks. She had just lost the one thing that mattered most, her son's trust and her own heart. And the only person who could help her find it again was sitting in a jail cell, waiting to be cleared. The door to the 5th-floor apartment opened in the middle of a gray, rainy afternoon. Celeste Marlowe, the woman who once made others tremble with a single glance, now stood drenched, hands shaking, hair tangled by the wind. No assistant. No security. Only a weight of regret, heavy as a stone pressed against her chest. She stepped into the small room, where a dim light cast soft shadows across the wrinkled face of Amara's mother, a woman who once served as a wartime nurse, now motionless from a stroke. And yet, though she couldn't rise, her eyes met Celeste's with a piercing clarity. Celeste fell to her knees. No trace of wealth. No armor of icy composure. Just a mother, broken. I was the one who was truly blind. Not Elliot. I punished your daughter for daring to do what was right. And yet she saved my son. And she saved me too. Amara stood beside them silent, watching the woman of power melt into tears. And then softly she said, Elliot needs a mother, not a warden. No grand speech, no dramatic music. Just a real moment when two mothers from opposite worlds realized love does not control. Love sets free. No one brought Amara back to the mansion. She didn't need them to, because the one who brought her back was Elliot, through a letter written in Braille, sent by his own hands. You are light, even if my eyes have never seen it. Amara didn't waste a moment. She called an old friend, Dr. Leon Whitaker, a neuro-ophthalmologist who once mentored her on a research project that was shut down due to lack of funding. Elliot's files were sent. An emergency board was assembled. And just 1 week later, the surgery was approved, funded by a charitable foundation quietly established by Celeste. The operation took 4 hours. Celeste held Amara's hand outside the OR, no longer employer and employee, but two women trembling in hope. 2 months later, the bandages came off, and light touched the eyes that had slept too long in darkness. Elliot blinked, blurry, unsteady. And then, as the image sharpened, his lips quivered. Miss Amara, a tear rolled down his cheek, as for the first time, he saw the face of the one who had seen him from the very beginning. No miracle came from the heavens. It came from faith that never gave up, from love that asked for nothing in return, and from the courage to confront an entire system just to protect one child. 3 months after Elliot regained his sight, another transformation began, this time not inside a body, but within a building that once stood for power, indifference, and pride built on the wrong things, the Empire Restaurant. Celeste walked in as staff prepared for opening. No warning, no speech. Just one sentence that froze the entire room. Grant is fired, effective immediately. He couldn't speak. No one intervened. An old power was erased, not by gunfire, but by awakening. 3 weeks later, Empire shut down. The black wooden sign came down. The red velvet curtains were replaced. The walls, once lined with portraits of the elite, were painted white and filled with artwork from visually impaired children across the city. On opening day, Celeste took the stage, not as a restaurant owner, but as a mother who had learned to step back so her child could move forward. I don't want to rebuild an empire. I want to rebuild a vision. The new sign rose to a wave of applause. The second site, a place where every child is seen. For the first time, this restaurant wasn't made for the privileged. It was made for the children who had once been forgotten in the dark, and for those who dare to see what others refuse to. Music filled the air on the opening day of the second site, but this time, no one asked for dim lights or fine wine. The tables and chairs were pushed to the sides. In the center, a wide open space, simply called the free floor. Celeste sat quietly in the front row, her hand clutching a handkerchief embroidered with the letter E. Elliot stepped into view in a small tailored suit, hair neatly combed, but his eyes shone brighter than any light in the room. No one guided him. No whispers to lead the way. He walked toward Maya, a 6-year-old girl in a wheelchair, legs stiff and curled, and gently extended his hand. Maya, would you like to dance with me? The entire room went still. Maya nodded. And as soft jazz played in the background, Elliot began to move, not in perfect rhythm, but in perfect trust. He didn't lead with sight. He led with faith. He spun Maya gently in her chair, letting her feel the breeze brush across her cheek, and she laughed. Celeste didn't cry out. She simply wiped away her tears, the kind of emotion she had locked away for years, afraid it made her weak. For the first time, she saw her son truly free. And the one leading him forward was no longer her. After the grand opening, once the guests had left, and the children were still laughing and playing on the wooden floor, Celeste called Amara into a small room in the back, where sunlight streamed through a square window, casting soft light across a flawless white table. She placed something down, a small object, a silver-plated key. Amara looked at it, then up, unable to hide her surprise. Celeste didn't speak at length. She spoke as if each word had been warming inside her for a very long time. We're going to open a center for children of color with disabilities. Children who don't just need light for their eyes, but light for their faith. And I can't think of anyone to lead it but you. Amara stood still. She had once been expelled for being too emotional, dismissed by the system for not knowing her place, handcuffed for being kind. And now, the very person who once believed in that system was placing the future in her hands. I don't need someone great with spreadsheets, Celeste continued. I need someone who sees what others don't. The way you saw my son, when all of us turned away. Amara didn't cry. She simply nodded, slow, deep, as if accepting a responsibility, not just an opportunity. Because now she was no longer a caregiver. She was a guide. And this time she would be leading an entire generation. It wasn't a model therapy center. Not a showroom for high-end machines or state-of-the-art monitoring systems. The new center was called Voices in the Dark, built from the very things the system used to dismiss: emotion, sound, touch, and a deep respect for the souls of children. Amara didn't build classrooms based on textbook standards. She divided space through sound, soft drums, simulated rain, rhythmic wind chimes, so each blind child could sense where the learning space ended and the play space began. The walls were covered in textured fabrics, each color described with words that could be felt. Red, like the warmth when your hand is near a candle. Green, the gentleness of morning grass. There were no rows of desks, but circles in motion. Children weren't forced to follow directions. They were invited to feel and respond. Elliot was the first student. And just 3 months in, he became a teaching assistant, guiding other children to find rhythm through handshakers, teaching Maya how to sense music through the tips of her toes. No one pushed Elliot to fit in. He chose how to connect because someone once believed he could. And this center is where every child once swallowed by darkness is finally heard in their own voice. Late afternoon. Sunlight stretched long across the glass hallway of Voices in the Dark. Elliot and Emmanuel sat in the courtyard, building a raised wooden model together, no instructions needed, just the feeling at their fingertips, and laughter bursting like musical notes. Amar stood by the door, a cup of hot tea in hand, glancing at Celeste, now stripped of designer labels, wearing only a simple gray sweater. She asked, not harshly, but with a quiet depth that cut straight to the bone, "Have you ever actually apologized to Elliot?" Celeste stayed silent. So long that Amara thought she wouldn't answer. But then, softly, without looking at anyone, just gazing through the glass, "I don't think a sorry is enough. But I'm learning how to be a mother again from the beginning. Each day, through every step my son takes." Amara said nothing more. She just stood beside her, watching Elliot laugh, as Emmanuel dropped a wooden piece, and both boys picked it up, as if there had never been a wound. No one is born knowing how to be a mother. No one is immune to mistakes. But some have the courage to relearn by letting go of control and choosing to walk alongside. And sometimes learning how to love the right way is the most honest apology of all. The 1-year anniversary of Voices in the Dark drew hundreds, parents, doctors, teachers, and many who once dismissed it as a non-standard approach. The auditorium was packed. Cameras live-streamed. Reporters jostled in the back. But when the stage lights dimmed, leaving only a single beam shining down at the center, the entire room fell silent. Elliot stepped forward. No guide. No cue cards. The boy who once sat alone in the corner of a luxury restaurant, forced to live in the darkness of a mother too afraid to let go, now stood tall, bathed in light. Free. Whole. He lifted his chin, voice clear. "When I was blind, people thought I didn't know anything. But I knew I heard everything. I heard them call me a burden, a tragedy, a problem to be fixed. No one looked at me like I was human. The audience held their breath. Now I can see. But I've realized what hurt the most wasn't the darkness in my eyes. It was the darkness in the way people looked at me. Celeste lowered her head. Amara stood still. And dozens of parents quietly wiped away tears. Elliot smiled. Here in this center, no one has to be perfect. We just need to be seen with the heart. The boy who was once blind was now teaching the world how to truly see. As the ceremony ended, people slowly filtered out of the auditorium. Only the soft echo of footsteps on wooden floors remained, and the final lights began to dim. Amara sat alone in the last row. On stage, Elliot and Emmanuel were packing up props, slowly, patiently, as if every movement carried its own meaning. She watched the two boys, then quietly opened the small notebook she always carried, the one that had recorded Elliot's journey since the first day he ever spoke her name. Under the soft amber glow, she wrote a few lines meant for no one to read. But later, in a quiet speech to the students of the center, she would share them. I used to believe that to protect someone, you had to walk in front of them. To guide them, shield them, hold their hand at all times. But Elliot taught me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go. To step back so someone else can find their own way and walk toward the light. On their own rhythm, a child was allowed to lead. A mother learned to love again. A woman once overlooked now leads an entire center. And a new world began in a place where no one used to see anything. But in the end, everyone was seen. Because some revolutions don't start with a roar. They begin with someone brave enough to kneel down and wipe a forgotten child's face.